We are back. Happy Monday, y'all. This is now the 8th episode of Destructuring Tech. We're slowly getting up there to number 10. But yeah, this is the podcast where we focus on unpacking the complexities of tech and software into simpler topics. Here, I am always trying to hand the microphone to people from all over the tech world, both new and experienced developers, and people with different experiences. Last week, we had a really fun show with Ellen Mary Hickman, the Senior Director of Programs at Turing, and Jeff Casimir, the founder and Executive Director at Turing. We got an inside look to where Turing kind of came from, the development it has undergone over the years, and a sneak peek of what the future of Turing looks like in the coming years. If you haven't already, make sure to watch that later after this show. You can always catch us on YouTube for the stream, or listen to our podcast on Anchor, Spotify, and Google Podcast. The views, likes, and follows are greatly appreciated. Just as a reminder, if you are watching us live, make sure to drop a line in the chat. Questions, comments, they're always welcome. But y'all know what time it is. I'm the host, Travis Rollins, and I'm one of the instructors at the Turing School of Software and Design. And I'm super stoked to be joined by our special guest, Hanna Kim, on the show. Hanna is a software engineer at ShipShape and was also a 2005, 2006 alumni from Turing. And it's just been great getting to stay in touch with you, Hanna. I feel like we've been kind of like off and on, kind of staying in touch ever since you graduated. And I'm just super happy to have you on the show today. But yeah, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's good to be chatting with you again, Travis. And yeah, I did appreciate your help navigating just the job hunting process and just keeping up here and there with little questions. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
good, good to be able to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, did you do anything fun over this last weekend? Anything exciting happening over there?
Yeah, it was a little more than I've expected, or yeah, I've had with the pandemic and all going on still. I flew out for a wedding in Austin that got delayed a year because,
Oh
last
gosh.
year.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
yeah, just hung out with some other friends who I also had in Texas and just got back really late last night because,
Nice.
flights always get delayed.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good to be
Yes.
back home.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thanks for continuing to do this. That's really exciting. I feel like I keep talking to more and more people who keep going to Austin, Texas. So, uh seems like the hot spot right now for some reason. So, that's great.
Yeah, I think it's like Denver where it's just booming a lot right now with the tech scene and just, yeah, a lot of good people and music and things like that there. Mm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, very cool. We'll start out with some like quick intro stuff. So again, you graduated from Turing. I think it
Mhm.
was, correct me if I'm wrong on this. It was like back in January, right?
Yep, at the end of the January this year.
Awesome. Well, congrats to that.
Mhm.
So now you've been working at ShipShape, I think, for like 6 months or so now.
Mhm.
Could you give us like a quick intro and like what does ShipShape do and like what's kind of your role at that company?
Sure. So ShipShape's a consultancy, and so I'm one of the software engineer consultants there. Um, yeah, we work with a lot of front-end JavaScript frameworks, and in the past, they were focused a lot on Ember, using Ember.
Okay.
But things are changing. I've heard that more companies are starting to use React, Vue, some newer frameworks. So we're kind of pivoting over to that.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
Yeah. Is it just because it's like the hot tech right now, or was there like were there like just some like dislikes on Ember, or like what was kind of the motivation of transferring over?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of reasons. It seems like we were just getting a lot more work with clients who use things like Next.js or Vue or Vue's version of Next, which is Next.
Hmm.
So that's kind of promoting that change. And then
Okay.
some arguments I've just read online and heard from people are that Ember is kind of hard to learn, especially for newer developers, since there's just a lot more structure that you have to get down versus like React. I guess you can learn bit by bit and um, yeah, I guess get into it a little easier. And so it seems the more people use, I guess, one framework, it just gains in popularity, and it's kind of hard to go against that, maybe.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's really cool. How big is the team at ShipShape?
Yeah, so we have 6 employees total. It's myself as one of the newer hires, as well as one other Turing grad who joined a couple
Yeah.
months after me. Yeah, so it's
Okay.
a small company, and we have a handful of contractors too, I think, who are mostly based in the US, but there's also some people abroad as well.
Gotcha. Okay, so it sounds like it's very remote, kind of
Hmm.
people all over working. Um, well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you've been working, it sounds like you've been working with just kind of depending on the client, working with different technologies. You said like Next.js, Nuxt, which is, it sounds like it's very similar to Next. Like, is it like server side rendering of Vue instead of
Mhm.
React or?
Right, and I we haven't really used that quite so much yet. I think it's mostly in Vue that I've done some
Okay.
programming in, but yes. Um, yeah, the client I was with was using Vue um, for
Okay.
for their web applications. And sorry, I forget the question you just asked.
No, that's okay. No, that was great. I was just asking what technology. So yeah, that's so working with Vue.
Mhm,
Have you been really liking Vue? I imagine it's been a little bit since you've worked with React, but have you kind of
mhm.
like this is my framework, this is my go-to now?
Yeah, I've definitely gotten more used to it as time has passed. I do like that there is some level of organization compared to React.
Mm,
Um, yeah, yeah, it's gotten easier to get used to as I've tried different tickets, building out similar ones too. There was a lot of putting, I guess, different components, separating them out, and writing tests for them. And it's something that we use in school, just so that was at least somewhat familiar. And that we use Vue's testing library. And then there was
okay.
another, yeah, tech that we used called Storybook that we used to test out the components and make sure that they're all
Huh.
working. Yeah, so those are some other techs that we also used.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, that's super cool. I know at one point we used to teach Jest with like
Mm,
testing React back
mhm.
in the day before we switched over to Cypress, but
Oh, yeah, I guess,
um
yeah, he's had a lot more changes going on too. Mm,
yep. Yep, exactly. So, but yeah, that's super cool. I've heard about Storybook as well. I'm not as super familiar with that one, but
mhm,
um I've heard it's pretty common. So, well,
yeah,
awesome. Well, I have, before we kind of
mhm,
get into more depth, you know, aside from all the work focused pieces, just to throw something in a little bit more fun here, a lot of the staff at Turing, we've been talking about things that are bucket filling or like
mhm.
things that kind of bring us pleasure that are fun to do outside of work, right? So, just curious, like, what's something that you've personally like been enjoying doing outside of work life?
Yes, it's been really nice to just be able to get outside. The weather's been really awesome for at least some of the summer. You know, we have had
Yeah.
some air quality issues keeping us indoors still. But
Yes.
yeah, we recently adopted a corgi, so it's been fun to take him out on hikes and also try to take him paddle boarding. He's not super used to the water yet, but it's
Mhm.
really cute to just see him paddle around.
That's
Mm,
amazing. Paddleboarding with the dog. I love it.
mhm.
Yeah, bringing pets into your life is always great. I just
Yeah.
recently actually in the last week got a kitten
Oh,
and
cool.
he's been he's a he's a little troublemaker, but
Hmm.
just brings some light to the everyday. So that's great. I haven't taken him swimming. I don't think cats are into water as much,
You
but
never know.
um you know, you never
Mm,
know. That is true until you give them the opportunity, right? So that's awesome. I think what was it? You were telling me a couple days ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, you started doing was it rollerblading, roller skating? How's that going?
yeah, so it turns out there's a giant group in Denver. It's called Dust, if anyone's, I guess, in the area. And yeah, we
Okay.
meet up at different parks and just go skate around in the loops. And the first week I went, actually the only week I did like the big one of the big group rides, they took us down this parking garage. And so that was pretty nerve wracking, just like trying not to hit any cars and slowly
Yeah,
going
that sounds
down.
terrifying. Do you know
Yeah.
how to stop at this point?
If I'm going at like 2 miles an hour, yes, or I can run into
Okay.
the grass.
Running into the grass is good. Yes. I
Yeah,
feel like stopping is like the most important part out of all of that.
I
But
know. Yeah, like we were talking about briefly before with your forays into boxing. Like it's just like harder to get hit, get on the ground falling So I'm just like
Yep.
afraid to learn to brake because I don't want to fall, but I think I just have to commit to it and
Yep. Yep. You're
yeah.
gonna fall at some point. As long as you can fall somewhere soft,
Hmm.
that will help, right? But yeah, it's tricky. So
Hmm.
um well, cool. Well, that's awesome that you're getting into that. I'm glad. Congrats to the corgi, and cheers to taking on something new and doing some rollerblading. So um but awesome. We've got an idea about you now a little bit more.
Sure.
But I want to kind of rewind it as I tend to do with these shows. I want to rewind it back to the beginning first before we talk more about your work at ShipShape. So,
Mhm.
so just curious to hear, like, I don't think you were always a software developer. What were you kind of
Mhm.
doing before that and before you even came to Turing?
Yeah, so I guess I've done a lot of different things here and there, I guess, since finishing college. Um, I moved to Colorado. I wanted to go up to the mountains and ski, so I did that for a season. And then it turned out to be the year that cannabis was getting legalized. So I gave it a
Okay.
shot in that industry for a few years. And
Yeah.
then yeah, I've always just been interested in like personal health development and movement. So I worked as a massage therapist and as well as doing digital marketing for a few different companies here in town. And so all of that kind of just came to a halt when the pandemic hit.
Mm.
And I had been feeling that the work I had been doing, while I enjoyed it overall, and the flexibility that it gave me, it was just getting repetitive. And I wanted something that involved a little more learning and change. um, so yeah, that's when I had a friend actually who had completed the program at Turing herself. She had just been starting her job hunt and been
Okay.
having a good time. Yeah, just meeting different companies and figuring out what she wanted to do. So she got me to try coding weekend, and that's how I got introduced to Turing. And it kind of just went really quickly from there. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I had actually considered software development 5 years before, but the program I was looking at, it was just a lot less information. So I just didn't
Mm.
really think that it was something that was for me. I just had like this big fear around it, and it was to the point where I wasn't even looking up what is even coding. So yeah, I'm glad
Yeah.
that it was more of an
That's
introduction to
awesome.
that.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So it's so interesting. We were talking just before we went live. Like,
Mhm,
so interesting. You had that background in massage therapy. Like, we just had someone, Taylor
mhm,
Jordan, 3 episodes ago, I think, who also came from that background.
mhm.
So very interesting just to see like the backgrounds that people are coming from and how they like just getting into software development.
Sure.
So that's super cool. And I'm curious, like you mentioned, like this was something that you looked at like 5 years ago.
Mhm,
Um, what was, you don't have to go into names, of course, but like
mhm.
or specific details, but like what was you mentioned there wasn't a whole bunch of like information that was
Mhm.
like shared or like didn't quite get as much. What was kind of like the difference between the previous program that you were looking at and Turing? Like, what was that missing factor that kind of uh, prevented you from kind of taking a step forward
Yeah,
5 years ago?
so yeah, I don't know if I knew everyone's like familiar with the try coding weekend that Turing does, where I guess if you're trying the front end piece of that, you would be
Hmm.
doing creating a basic app using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and someone's leading you through that. So if you have any questions, you can ask, or they're also showing you how to do all that. So
Hmm.
like in hindsight, I feel like that makes so much more sense as an introduction to coding, especially from people that don't have that background, versus like the program that I was looking at in the past. It was in person, which was nice, but I think it was like a PowerPoint slideshow about what some of the curriculum might entail. Yeah, it was long ago, so I don't remember all the details, but it didn't have like that hands-on portion that gets you like that, that visual and just
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't give you like the experience of just seeing that for yourself and seeing like what's possible. So I think,
right,
yeah, I think they had like a take-home test that they wanted us to do and see if you would qualify for the program. And so I just literally never opened that that package, I think, and I was like, nope, that's
yep,
probably not going to work out. I have no idea, yeah, how to learn this language to talk to computers who can't even talk back to me. But yeah, at that
right,
point, I didn't know that error messages exist, and you still fight with
yep.
them, but they help now.
There's somewhat of a like two-way conversation once you find out about those error
Hmm.
messages. They they aren't always the most helpful, but depends on the day, right? So,
Right.
um, but yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I feel like it was similar for me as well when I got into programming, just like uh, getting hands on with it. It's like one thing to like, this is what programming is. This is the stuff that you're going to be learning, and like, okay, that sounds all nice. Am I gonna be just like writing a bunch of like zeros and ones, or
Mm-hmm.
like what is this? What does this mean, right? So
Mm-hmm.
getting hands on, and that's I'm glad to hear like you had that opportunity and got to get more hands on with it, because definitely is a whole new story. Kind of just opens the blinds a little bit to see that. So
Mm-hmm.
um, well, I'm curious. When I first signed up for Turing, I didn't really know what to expect. And like you, like we were just saying, like I went to a try coding with Turing, and I thought it was informative, but still, like to that point, I was like, okay, I got slightly an idea, which okay, I had my day or two of learning about what is front end development, what is back end development, and but to be honest, I still wasn't really aware of all the things that kind of go into programming.
Sure.
And so I'm just curious, like, what was it like for you, especially like your first few days of Turing?
Mm-hmm.
Um, did you still have those questions? Were you excited? Were you scared? What was it like?
Yeah, I think at that point I was still like unsure if everything would work out. I was hoping for the best and trying to believe in myself and in my abilities. But yeah, I
Yeah.
was definitely nervous and also exciting to just be trying something new because I think that's just something I enjoy doing.
Mhm.
Personally, like I just like trying different things and challenging myself to see if that's something I can accomplish. So let's see. Yeah, I continued on with talking to my friend just about her experiences. Yeah, just to see if it would be a good fit, I guess, yeah, prior to actually committing to the program. And then she introduced me to some other people that I could talk to, just get an idea of yeah what I might be facing with the program. Let's see, first few days. Um, hmm. Oh, I think it helped also that we had that Mod Zero program, which I heard didn't exist a few years back, and it was a
True.
somewhat new introduction. So I think that helped just, kind of on ramp me into the school before it turned into like the 60, 70, sometimes 80, unfortunately, hour weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I guess like what I had in my mind was that I was just going to take it a day at a time. It was good knowing that there was like a curriculum set up to teach me what I would need to know to be a professional software developer.
Sure.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's so interesting when we first had the program set up. Like to your point, it wasn't until like a year or two ago when we had Mod Zero, and your first day at Turing was literally your first day,
Mhm.
and there's just so many questions of like, what the hell is this? Like, uh, I know for me, even like I thought, like, is there like design included in this?
Mm.
Which it is very different, right? It is not. There's design inspirations and pieces around
Mhm.
that, right? But it's not an actual like design specific to front end development. But yeah, having that Mod Zero where you kind of get some exposure to both the people that you're going to be working with and what it's going to be like. I'm glad to hear that that's beneficial at that point. So yeah, well that's awesome. I'm looking at the chat. Someone was mentioning to show Loki.
Is that your
Loki is
cat?
the kitten that I got. Yes, he's the god of mischief. And I named him that because when I first met him, he I was picking him up at the Dumb Friends League, an
Oh.
adoption place, and his one of the first things that he did was he pulled down one of the levers on the office chair.
Mhm.
So the next time someone sits down on it, it's gonna go flying down, falling off. So yeah, troublemaker. He loves biting my toes and stuff when I'm trying to sleep. He's great, but
He's full of
uh,
shenanigans.
yes, he's full of shenanigans, absolutely.
Mhm.
So, he's sleeping right now. He's passed out on the floor
Mhm.
over here. But maybe if he wakes up, maybe he'll get a guest appearance as well. So, um,
Awesome.
we'll see. We'll see. Um, all right. Well, another question for me. I hear a lot about it from others. I know from my own experience at Turing, like super challenging, no question about that.
Mhm.
But I think there's think it goes deeper than that. There's a lot more layers to that challenge.
Mhm.
Whether it's, getting familiar with the content, knowing what to be focusing on or understanding like do I know the thing? Can I move forward? Or, there's just a lot of pieces, um and understanding the context of all those pieces. So, during your time at Turing, like, what did you find was most challenging? Was it the content itself?
Mm.
Was it setting up your own schedule? And how did you kind of work through that afterwards?
Yeah. I guess depending on the module or even the week by week or even day by day, because things
Yeah,
were moving so quickly, the challenges would change. But
yeah,
I think one of the biggest things that I struggled with was just like not even knowing what I'm stuck on, if that makes sense. Like not being able to
mhm,
articulate, like I don't know how to move forward with this. So
yeah,
I think, yeah, as people might know already, like rubber ducking is really handy. Like when you're just like talking to an inanimate object, just try to explain what's going on to yourself. Or I guess my version of that would be like writing. I'm starting to write out a message to plea for help for someone online, and then
yeah,
in that process of like describing what I have going on in that code and what I'm missing, then some like half the time you find out for yourself what you've been missing, and you don't actually have to hit send, and you can keep moving
yeah.
forward. So yeah, that's something I'm
Nice.
still I think learning to fine tune. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's cool to see like the changes that you go through. I guess like from day one of the program to now where I'm working, you get stuck on different things, but yeah, I guess
mm,
that's the thing. You get stuck on different things, and that's also showing growth. I guess is what an argument that I've heard from one chat, and that was good to hear from you.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. There's always something new to encounter, something new to work through. What for those like maybe not as familiar, rubber ducking. Do you mean like you rubber duck kind of like with yourself, or do you actually like talk with another person? And on another note of that is like what like when I used to do rubber ducking, especially like when I went through the program, it was more in person, so I could just go to someone and be
Mm,
like, "Hey, what the hell am I doing wrong here?" Or like, "Can you take a look at this? Am I making sense or am I speaking gibberish?" Um, what does that look like in remote life? How does
sure.
that look?
Yeah, I feel like it was definitely a learning process to go from like, "Hey, can I share my screen or this screenshot with you, and you tell me what's wrong with this because I have no idea." And I guess I
Yeah.
realize now that after I've done that on the other side too, like people
Mhm.
don't know the context of what you're talking about when you just show them something, especially if it's not something they're working on themselves. So you have to
Right.
figure out how to tell them in, I guess, as precise a way as possible. Yeah, what you're trying to do. um, so for me, I guess, yeah, it would start with pseudocode more so. It's easier for me to see visually like what's going on. So I would type a lot of notes to myself, and that's how I would
Yeah.
do that. Mm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I like that. It's so. I feel like even as a teacher, like we talk about these like things of like uh pseudocoding something out, like trying to break out the problem into smaller pieces,
Mhm.
trying to put it more in English form and breaking it out. But it's one thing to like hear that, it's another to experience it, and
Mhm.
then it's a whole third one to be like thinking about like experience that from the other side of it, right? Like
Mhm.
I see the screenshot, I see the
Sure.
the code, but I don't have any context on this. Can you
Sure.
tell me more, right?
Mhm.
So um yeah, that's really cool. Really cool. Um, well, maybe one more question before we kind of move forward from Turing stuff. I'm just curious to hear like what was the best feedback you ever received while you were at Turing?
Hmm. Oh gosh, I meant to look this up. I'm sorry. I wrote these notes out while I was on the plane last night. um, but okay, well, roundabout. So I
Yeah,
had a really friendly cohort of classmates when I was doing the
yeah,
program, and some of the what is it, the SLC reps, I think, like the student leadership team.
yeah,
They came up with an event during one of our weekly retros that we would do to catch up at the end of the week, where we
mhm,
all write compliments about each other. So I think that's like a great thing to do, just putting it out there, just to like help
yeah.
people, feel good about themselves and their abilities. So I was planning on going into that document to try to pick something out. But yeah, I think I've
That
generally heard that. Yeah, I mean, like
yeah,
easy to work with, and Yeah, I try to help out where I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I love that idea. Like
Hmm.
whether you're a student somewhere or even just like doing that wherever you work, right? Like we do that within our staff as well. It's just like sharing some wins and appreciations because like
Hmm.
programming, you haven't done it before, it's hard.
Hmm.
It can be draining, and I don't know, yeah, just setting aside that time to kind of show some appreciations and love, like yeah, it's super valuable. So
Yeah, yeah, it can be
um,
easier, to say nice things about other people, than to yourself sometimes. So it's nice to have that support back where other people can give you the feedback.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, on the flip side of that, and I apologize if nothing comes to mind, we can always revisit it at another time. But
Hmm.
on the flip side of like the best feedback,
Hmm.
I recognize feedback, whether it's from instructors or other, people you were working with.
Hmm.
It can be very personal, right? Like
Sure.
what works for one person doesn't always work for another, and there
Hmm.
can be a lot of nerd opinions around there, right? So I'm just curious from all the feedback that you got, whether it was instructors, other students, whatever it was, what was feedback that maybe wasn't as valuable to you?
Yeah, and yeah, I don't think I really ever got feedback that I didn't find helpful at all. I think part
Mm,
of it might be that, sometimes when like hearing criticism might be hard initially, but you know that people are trying to help you when they give you that feedback. So I think it's one, when you're giving that feedback, good to give it in a way that's also highlighting something that you find that person is doing well, and then putting it in a way that's not disparaging them. And I
yeah,
think, yeah, everyone at the school did a good job of that. So it never felt like I was being torn down or anything, but instead just really like genuinely trying to help me improve myself.
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I guess, when I guess that kind of reminded me of just like when you are working in teams and such, like sometimes like if someone's at a higher skill level or just coming from a different background, like it can be easy to maybe over explain something or go into details that are not necessarily for that problem at hand. So I think just figuring out how to balance that is an important skill,
Mm,
and just not giving the answer away, I guess, immediately. So that's just something that we learn, I think, as we go. And I'm learning to do that too. And on the other
yeah.
hand, not dragging it out so long that someone's stuck forever. You don't do that either.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. It's so tricky. That's
Mhm.
such a challenge. But yeah, I love the piece of like, here's the things that I appreciate about you. Here's the things that are like, you know, how can we like continue to grow on that, right? Like,
Mhm.
because yeah, things happen. No matter how, like, I feel like people always, when you're working with them, have the best of intent, right?
Mhm.
They're trying to do all the things. They're trying to be as supportive as possible, but you know, shit happens, whether it's with work or outside in our own personal lives, and so just giving like kind but constructive feedback, super valuable there. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that balance of like how in depth do I go on this? That's so tough, right?
Mhm.
Especially like um, what might be helpful for one person may not be for another person. So
Mhm.
such a tricky thing. It's building relationships, it's knowing your team, I guess, and
Yeah.
going from there. But
Yeah, and like you said, yeah, recognizing that everyone's human. And I guess maybe in like high stress times, like if you're in school and trying to finish a project on a tight deadline, or if it's for work, it might be the same situation.
yeah,
But yeah, realizing that you're all working in a team and not fighting amongst yourselves, but finding out how to work together more cohesively.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah, absolutely,
Mm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sharing on that. All very wise pieces of feedback there. I, taking a look kind of like after your experience at Turing, I know there was a few months in between, your graduation and
Hmm.
starting your first job at ShipShape,
Sure.
where you were very in deep with the job hunt. So, and I know there's just a lot of different levels that can be challenging with the
Hmm.
job hunt. So I'd just be curious to hear like what was kind of like your experience with the job hunt.
Yeah.
How did you stay sharp on things? How did you kind of like balance out your schedule while still job hunting? Yeah,
Hmm.
give us an inside look on that.
Yeah, I think that was a little I think the tricky part with, the job hunt was that it was a lot more free form than school where you have certain projects, you know that they're supposed to be this outcome, according to the spec sheet, and then, you pass if you meet enough expectations, you don't if you don't. So I think it was like
Right.
yeah, it was almost easier in that respect in some ways, that there was a very regimented guideline of what you had to follow versus the job hunt is kind of all your own thing to do. So you have to figure out
Yeah.
what worked for yourself. So there was a process in that, but I think what worked for me was focusing on getting the interviews. And I decided early on from talking to different alumni and friends who might be in the tech world themselves, like it's a pretty inefficient process to have to put in a bunch of blind applications that maybe 1,000 other people are applying to as well, and you just really get lost in that mix. And so I heard from one friend that she had applied to like 150 apps. Like, it might have not taken that much time to do them, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
still a high number of them that do add up to a certain amount of time. And only heard
Mhm.
back from, let's say, like 9 of them. I don't remember the exact number. So yeah, that's not how I wanted to spend my time. I thought it might be more fruitful for me to focus on making connections with people. So I did a lot of outreach throughout my time at school, and also the coming weeks of the job hunt. I would just pretty much join yeah any group that I could. Sometimes ones that were identity based, those were helpful because I think like when
Yeah.
you belong to like a smaller subset of people, they might be more willing to help out because they have something that connects you to them. So those
Yeah.
might be good for yeah for you to look out for. Yeah, and I think it could be identity based, but it could be also something silly like the roller skating group. You don't know who you're gonna meet when you go to things like that.
True.
Um, yeah, and then so yeah, focused on meeting people, and I would have a lot of informational conversations with them, not really with the goal of like I need to get an interview out of them, but just to learn how to speak about myself in a way that would project a good image of myself. And that is something I was working on during school too, just like finding good ways to talk positively about myself because that's important when you're interviewing. Yeah,
Yeah.
so learning how to talk better about myself, and also just learning what's out there. Like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew like I had some front end engineering skills now, but yeah, there's a lot of avenues you can go. Whether you're working for a product company, consulting, um,
Yeah.
and everything in between. I guess like testing positions exist too. Yeah, so just like learning
Sure.
what's out there was important. And I think all that effort kind of helped me prevent having to actually put in applications. Like it just naturally trickled in, and I think part of that was just luck too. I would think.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. There's a certain balance with the job
Mhm.
hunt, whether it's there is some luck, being there at the right time, meeting the right person, all those kinds of pieces. But to your point, like, uh, it's not 100% luck either, right? There is like all the connections and
So hard to
stuff that you
say.
have to
Yeah.
build. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Mhm.
I'm curious,
Mhm.
like, I say this because like I felt the same fear as well when I graduated from Turing, where I was
Mhm.
like, I didn't have any experiences with tech or anything like that in the past. I was a musician previous to all this, so
Mhm.
not many avenues or knowing where to go. So um, for people who are like kind of graduating from Turing and working in that
Mhm.
job hunt process, like
Sure.
could you share even more so on like you mentioned you spent a lot of time networking. Did you like
Mhm.
look at like companies and then kind of like pick out individuals from there, or even with identity groups, like
Sure.
what were your kind of like steps into figuring out like what groups even exist at that point?
Yeah, let's see. So I spent, I guess, a decent amount of time, I don't know, an hour or 2 a day maybe, just scrolling around on LinkedIn just to see if anything
Yeah.
relevant would hit. Um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, the Turing Job Hunt channel helped, and then all the Mod 5 resources that existed also. Like if I saw something that I liked the description of, I would type the company's name on LinkedIn, see if I have any contacts or ask around too, because yeah, the network is there for you.
Yeah.
Mm, sorry, let me try to organize some thoughts.
That's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
I do have a list of some, yeah, or networking groups that I can pass on as well, if that would be helpful. But yeah, I would just kind of,
Sure.
yeah, join them as people would mention them. I joined the donuts chat with how I got in contact with a lot of alumni and yeah, I think it was nice to just be paired with someone random too, because you never know what you're gonna learn from the different people you talk with. So that's a good way to
Sure.
just foster, yeah, some level of community. I think, especially with the remote environment, when you can't just bump into someone in the hallway and be like, "Hey, what's going on?"
Right. Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
also helpful. Yeah, I ended up finding like a hackathon to join from one of the groups that the meetup groups that I had joined, just getting updates from them. And I think that just
Okay.
provided, something that wasn't explicitly job hunting to do as well. So that, y- yeah, I had something that I felt like I was working on that was more fun and like in line and like with my values. Since it was the hackathon was focused on creating app ideas that would foster women's empowerment, economic empowerment.
Nice.
So yeah, I think it was like a way to just show, hey, I'm interested in using tech to do these things that I'm interested in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, that's super cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing that because I think
Mhm.
it's hard to pinpoint those like exact resources. And again, it's
Mhm.
very personal. Uh, you have to try out some different things and play to like some of your strengths of like maybe I'll try out this hackathon. Maybe I'll reach out and like network
Mhm.
to some people at some of these companies or take available some of those resources. I think it is and I have a lot of respect for like how you kind of approach this. Like you have to be very intentional.
Mhm.
Even like doing like the donut channel, right? Like getting to meet a new person. Was it once a week or once? Is it
Yeah,
once
I
a
tried
week or a
to,
month?
yeah, if it was possible every week, yes. And
Cool.
then, yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah, on top of that, I would, yeah, just try to organize a chat with someone from my personal network too. Like if I had a friend who wanted to introduce me to a friend, I'd be like, yes, I definitely want to talk to this person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Um, well, one more question on that piece. This is something that we do towards like the end, right before graduation, where we have students kind of like come up with like the schedule for what the first week after graduation looks like. Because to your point, you don't have that structure anymore. Like there's no projects, no classes, right? Like you have made it to the other side, which is very exciting and terrifying at the same time. And so I get to I see a lot of like schedules that are put together, and some of them are a little bit more like relaxed. Some of them have that like 9 to 4 schedule where like
Mhm.
I'm going to spend 3 hours on the job hunt. I'm going to spend 3 hours refactoring projects and learning Python or whatever the new technology is, right? What did your kind of like first week look like, and were you
Mhm.
working 8 hours a day, or you mentioned like you were doing a couple hours maybe a day doing some of the job hunt stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, just curious what that looked like.
Yeah, so I guess backtracking a little, I was lucky that I had a couple of interviews lined up either like towards the end of mod 4, like the last mod of the school, and
Yeah.
or ones that were going to be right after that ended. So I was focused on those two, obviously, and I can chat about those later if, yeah, if we have time for that or if we want.
Sure.
So yeah, with I guess those interviews going on, and as well as just like the final requirements for completing the schoolwork, I felt pretty burnt
Uh-huh.
out, so I decided to take the first week off. So I did want to throw that out there. Like, if you feel like you need a break, like I don't think, yeah, you should feel guilty about that or ashamed about that. Like, yeah, I think it's good to take some time for your mental health and just recuperate and start somewhere where you're going to be stronger the following week. And yeah, it really
Yeah.
helped just having that bit of time to myself. So yeah, the first week was nothing. I, job hunt related. I think I just went outdoors,
Yeah.
hung out with friends, and so
Nice.
following that, it wasn't like a strict schedule, and I thought that I was going to be putting like 4 6-hour days or so into the job hunt. But I think with
Mhm.
everything involved, and once the interview processes actually got rolling, it probably turned out to be closer to 30-40 hours a week. But I don't know if it's necessary for anyone to like try to stick to that. I think it makes sense to
Yeah.
do, yeah, what feels right for that week. But anyway, what I was trying to say earlier on was that it seemed to me to make sense to focus on like that networking piece to try to get to get those interviews going before even like trying. I guess like instead of perfecting like all my interview skills or my technical skills, like I think
Mm.
a piece of advice I heard myself a couple of times was that if you don't have an interview, then you're not going to be able to showcase your skills. So that was a reason for me, focusing really heavily on that networking piece, especially since I didn't really feel like doing blind applications. I thought that was my way out of that.
Yeah.
So once I would get past like a behavioral interview, usually people have, like a 20-30 minute screening to start the conversation, and then you maybe get like a technical challenge afterwards. So once I would get to that step was when I would ramp up on brushing up on, logical problems, or maybe a piece of technology that I might need to know for that particular interview. Um, yeah, that's kind
That's
of how
awesome.
I formatted that, if that makes sense. I know it's pretty nebulous, so I'm not.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. I think to your point, like
Mhm,
you try things out, you experiment with some things, and you find out what works best for you.
mhm.
I also did the same thing. I'm sure Jeff would not be happy with me saying this, but when I graduated through Turing, I actually took 2 weeks off.
Nice.
Shame on me. Jeff is always like, you get 2 days off, then you got to get into it. But to your
Mhm,
point, take some time for self care. Get yourself kind of recharged into a place where you can kind of get into the grind again, and
mhm.
then put that work in. So, but yeah, it is interesting, like to hear like that time frame of like, okay, so yeah, like 40 hours a week. That does sound
Mhm.
that's
Sure.
what it took to get you there.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah,
Mhm,
I appreciate you sharing on that. It's always it's a tricky piece just hearing like what works for people and what that time frame. Whether people want a job within like 45 days or 90 days,
mhm.
right? And like,
Yeah.
what do you have to do to make that happen? So,
Yeah.
so I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Oh, and a random tidbit that I just recalled was, you know how on LinkedIn you might be adding a lot of people. I would say definitely don't add someone without, putting any message saying why you're doing it, because chances are, if it's someone you want to talk to, they want to know why you even want to connect with them. So that's on, I guess, like our side of it. And then on the other hand, one thing that got me a couple of opportunities was, if someone random would add me, I would just go ahead and ask them why they wanted to connect. And from that, I was able to get some part-time work from a local company. So that was actually my first little bit of contract, front end work.
Yeah.
I was just building out like a small, or not even building. Yeah, I was just fixing some bugs actually on like a Shopify website. So that's kind of how
Oh,
I
cool.
got a little hands-on work just to add as experience. And
Yeah.
an interview came in like that too. They were just happy that I decided to talk to them instead of waiting for that person to I guess initiate the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
awesome. It's so funny. Like that's a yeah. Just making sure when you are trying to connect with someone, send out a message. Because yeah, that happens to me a lot of the time too. Where like I'll get like a random invite, whether it's someone from Turing or it's someone from a different company. I'm like, so okay, who are you? What do you want? Right? Like, um, it's weird. Like messaging or dropping a message when sending out an invite is not normal or it's not common. I feel like, but to your point of like following up with that person, which is work, which takes up time, but
Mhm.
you never
Yeah.
know where it might lead up to. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's I guess maybe just with like the ramping up of how we're using social media now, with things being so much more remote. Yeah, like
yeah,
people just do all sorts of things. Because those are, I guess, two positive examples I had. But I had plenty of people add me, and I ask them what if they want to chat about anything, and they'll be saying something like, "Oh, I just wanted to add people to increase my network count," and that's not very useful for anyone. So
right,
there
right,
are.
yeah,
It's a mixed bag, but yeah, if it's something
yeah.
that you want to look into, then yeah.
Yeah, absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely. It's great. That's great. Well, I'm curious. I want to get into a little bit more about ShipShape, but just
Sure.
one more question around this application process is like, were there any like similar themes across application processes, or as you were applying and connecting with different companies, were there
Mhm.
anything that surprised you? And was it similar when you applied for ShipShape? What was that kind of process? What did that look like?
Yeah, let's see. Yeah, like I mentioned, usually companies start by scheduling maybe with the recruiter or whoever is hiring. If it's a smaller company, like the one I'm with, yeah, someone
Yeah,
will schedule out maybe like a 20, 30, maybe an hour long conversation with you just to see how you might fit into that company. So that's
sure.
usually step one, and then usually after that, if things go well, fingers crossed,
Yep.
yeah, there is some kind of technical screening component. The ones that I preferred, and the one that actually ShipShape used was sending out like a spec sheet with some features I might have to build for an application as part of that tech screening, and I had some time to look over that, ask a few questions, which helped me, figure out what I should focus on in preparing for the interview the next day. And then it
Yeah.
was a live coding session for about an hour where we paired with someone and yeah, build out those features and see how you get along. And I think that's good for both the company and myself too. Like it just gives you another opportunity to like figure out if these are people that you'd get along working with. Because for me, at least, that was a big priority. Like I wanted to know that I'd be in a supportive environment with people I get along with, because that's at the end of the day, like if you're working together, you want to get along and hopefully have a good time. So those are
Yeah.
some things that I was looking out for on my end. And yeah, I had a mix. Like the interview process with ShipShape was really short and sweet. Like I think I answered back a message from my now boss on a Saturday morning, and then scheduled out an interview for that Monday. That was like that behavioral like interview, informational interview, and then I think
Hmm.
by Wednesday I had the technical screening, and Thursday I had an offer. So it was a very quick process.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
versus like I did have some other interviews that went on for about 6 weeks. Just, being able to like figure out timing with all the different people in the company.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's like something to consider too. Like for me, I personally just enjoy working with smaller companies. There's a lot less of that, and not to say that I wouldn't work with a larger company. Like I think there's a lot of merit to that too, where you might be, work have they might have like their system a lot more dialed down to like what someone at this level would be doing, someone at that level will be doing. So yeah, I think there's
Hmm.
definitely benefits to that too. But yeah, it's just like another layer of it where you do need to meet 10 people instead of maybe two.
Right.
Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, the the hands-on like on screen like an hour or so, or maybe more, maybe depending on the company, like I mentioned. Yeah, like I
Yeah.
like that hands-on format more. I did do a few take-home challenges too,
Sure.
which I felt like a little, yeah. Um, I mean, you do them and you get experience, but it was a little more challenging for me because I would have questions like, how much time am I supposed to put in if I have a 3 day time limit? Like, should I be spending 8 hours on it, 10 hours on it? Because you want to try to do your best, but you also
Sure.
want to make sure that you're saving energy for your other opportunities too. So that was one thing that I didn't personally enjoy about that kind of process as much.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I guess like the other type of tech challenge you might get is like logic problems where you do something similar to what you might find on code wars or exorcism. So those are something I kept up with practicing as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. I appreciate like that overview of like the different types and
Mm.
what was kind of like beneficial to you. I really like the I think you mentioned like for ship shape like uh building out something that like you like uh trying to emulate what the work would be like if you were
Mhm.
actually doing it on the job, right? So that's, I mean, yeah, it gives you a chance to kind of like work with your team and build out things that you'd actually be working with, not just some random logic problem or computer science topic where
Mhm.
it's like, cool, I did it. Doesn't really emulate like what I'm actually doing
Right.
at my company. So
Yeah. Yeah, and I
yeah,
think that is,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know if it was just my personal experience, but I think at least half of my interviews were like that, where it was more,
nice.
real world builds. I guess for front end folks, it would be like an idea box where you build out a small app and you might have something like make a list and are you able to sort the list and maybe check something off that list, things like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. Well, I appreciate you kind of sharing more on on those pieces. Always great just to hear both like what's working, what's not working, and um, what companies are doing. Because I think like companies are trying to change things over time and improve on things. So just appreciate that kind of the update on that. So, well, cool. Let's, like the remainder of the time we have left, I want to kind of
Sure.
dive into a little bit more of like what your experience has kind of been like at ShipShape. So,
Mhm.
um, you know, you got the job, you went through the interview process. It's awesome that you kind of found out, like, sounds like within a week or so. Um, but I'm curious, like, what those maybe like those first couple of weeks looked like. Like, was there, especially with it being a smaller team, was there an actual onboarding process?
Mhm.
What were the expectations of you within those first couple weeks, first months? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, given that it's such a small company and a newer one too, um,
Mhm.
one expectation that my boss mentioned was that, like, we're learning how to, onboard a junior member since I was the first like junior engineer to get hired on to that team.
Yeah.
And I was happy to accommodate that since they're making the space for me as well. And I think it's like
Mhm.
really cool to just be able to get in at a company at a kind of the ground level where you're helping build the culture and things like that. um,
Sure.
so yeah, the onboarding process was not as formalized, I guess, like as you might get with a bigger company. Like I had a laptop shipped to me. I had some of the teammates like come on and help me figure out what apps to download and things. I wasn't paired with a client immediately, so
Okay.
yeah, they had just had me get set up, I guess, like the environment as best I could for what I would need to do, and I just started with tutorials for a few weeks, and I would also pair with different engineers on the team to do some open source tickets and some in-house projects. So that was kind of
Okay.
the onboarding process, I guess. Yeah, if that's, I think
Yeah.
that still counts.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Were you primarily like working on like fixing bugs, adding tests, like and when was like your first like actual PR that you made?
Yeah, so it was paired. So I don't know if I can like call it entirely my own, since
Sure.
I definitely had help.
Yeah.
But yeah, we worked on some Ember docs, just and style guides, fixing up some issues that it might have like in the documentation that people are using to create their own Ember projects.
Okay.
So that's what I remember. Yeah, with those open source projects. And then I guess yeah, my first PR once I got hired onto a client project was in the first week, and again we started with paired projects with my um, yeah, with my boss, but like yeah, and by that point I guess like he was trying to push me into doing my own stuff as well. I guess as we move on, yeah, it started pretty
Yeah.
quickly. Like once I got onto a client project.
Nice. Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I like that introduction, and I like that you're the idea of like kind of pairing through it, if possible, right? Like I know that can be sometimes challenge, especially with smaller teams, but yeah, it just gives you a chance to kind of like share, like bounce ideas off each other, similar to like what I imagine like you'd been doing at Turing and stuff as well, right? Just kind of
Mhm.
working through it, and building on that. So, um, yeah, no, that's really interesting. I'm curious, like with you having worked there now 6 months, how has like your day to day schedule changed, if any at all? Like, what is it? If it is it similar? Are you doing more things?
Yeah, sure. So I think over time, it's kind of gotten easier to find at least some level of rhythm because it does feel strange not having going, I guess, from school where everything was on a calendar. You have like this class at this time, and then you get this much
Yeah,
project time, um, and yeah, you have to meet with these people at so and so. So yeah, like having since you have to kind of create your own structure in a way. Yeah, I think day to day, it's kind of been I guess like yeah, what I'm doing is checking Jira, which is the project management tool we use instead of I think we use like GitHub project boards, right, for in school.
yeah,
Yeah, so it
yep,
wasn't
yep,
that big of a switch. I think they're all pretty similar. Just figuring out
yeah,
where the calendar is. This is what you're going to do for that week.
yep,
Yeah, so looking at that to make sure there aren't any, yeah, to see if there are any messages that I should be that are relevant to me and what I'm working on, and as
hmm
well as Slack too, since we did a lot of async stand-ups. Since the client I was put
okay,
with was also in Singapore, so there was a lot of Slack and yeah, async communication. And then we would have a
yeah,
stand-up once a week in person, so that yeah, we could I guess hash anything out that we needed to do that was I guess in a more immediate fashion.
Sure.
So yeah,
Yeah.
check up on messages in the morning. Um, yeah, see what other work I hadn't completed the day before, maybe. If not, like see what tickets might need to be picked up. Start working on that until I hit some kind of block, and then ask some questions. Maybe look at some tutorials or something. Or just some like personal growth type blogs or something like that for for being a new
Yeah.
developer. Because there have been a lot of virtual conferences. I don't know if you noticed that too. Like, I feel like there's one at least every month, if not more. So checking
Yeah.
those out here and there too. Um, and then yeah, going back to that work until it's finished. And the types of tickets I was generally working on, it would be usually building out some kind of feature, unit testing that to make sure it still works with everything else that's already in place. And then yeah, pushing up a PR, waiting for edits. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely a lot more editing involved, I think, as a lot of people told me, compared to in school where it's just like, you go through iteration 1, iteration 2, and then you're done with that project
Go, go,
next
go,
month.
go, go.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Um yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm glad like you it sounds like there's like a nice balance between like checking out those messages, having some flexibility to kind of like watch some videos,
Mhm.
go to conferences when possible, right? Um I'm curious, have you found like with working at a smart team, I feel like depending on the company, and it sounds like is this like is ShipShape more of like a startup, would you say?
I
Or
guess
has it been around
so.
for a while? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my boss did say like it kind of started somewhat organically for him, where he was participating a lot in open source code himself, and he was starting to get
Yeah.
recognition from different people, and then he just eventually started getting more work than he could like handle, I guess, in his free time. So that's how he started the company, which I thought was yeah
Gotcha.
pretty cool, pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
Yeah.
So then, sorry, what was the question?
So, yeah, I hadn't gotten to it, sorry. So I'm curious, like, with working at, like, a startup or with a smaller team, do you feel
Mhm.
like you have to I feel like there can be often be this, like, I forget I don't know what the word is I'm looking for here, but, uh, like, I feel like at startups, there can be this idea of, like, wearing many hats and
Mm.
having to do quite a bit more work, or being on call at strange hours, sometimes, comparatively to, like,
Mhm.
a bigger company who maybe, um, has figured out some of those kinks or
Sure.
whatever. So, just curious, like, is that hold true, do you feel like at ShipShape, or is it like do you feel like there's a pretty good balance and you kind of have a pretty regular structure each day?
Yeah. So far, yeah, I guess my role is pretty um, what's it called? Um, encapsulated in doing mostly something yeah, software engineer related. Yeah, like
Okay. Yeah.
we did have some talks like that there might be future opportunities where I could do things like, I guess, like figuring out how I might be able to lead a project at some point, or if I wanted to get more into
Oh,
the
cool.
business end, yeah, we could figure out doing some of that.
Yeah.
um yeah, I'm trying to uh, one thing that the company would like from the employees is that we put up some blog articles once a quarter or so
Hmm.
from each person, so that we're building up our presence as well. So that's something I'm trying to fight some of that imposter syndrome about, because I still sometimes feel like I don't know enough about this topic to write about this. So I'm trying to work
Yeah.
through that and get something published sooner than later.
Yep. Yep.
Mm.
Yep. Absolutely. And I think we were talking about you're writing. Can you remind me like you're writing a blog post right now? Do you have any idea of like what that's on or when we can expect that?
I guess if I say it, I'll have to have it done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have at least a draft done by the end of the month, and it'll be about yeah, some things you might want to look out for as testing as a newer developer. So just some
Uh-huh.
things that caught me, um, what I forget the saying, but yeah, just caught me off guard with testing
Yeah.
using Vue, especially since that was a new framework for me too. So I'll just be going into some examples. I guess async is always an area that causes some snags, so that's one point that I'll probably include. Mm.
Nice. That's awesome. All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that. And stay in touch with me, Hannah. And I'll try and
Sure.
include a link somewhere in the description when that does become available, so I can get some some views on that. So
Great.
that's awesome. Keeping our fingers crossed. Looking forward to that. So, all right. Well, I know we're starting to get closer to the end, so I'll try and wrap up a couple
Sure.
of my last questions. But you spoke to confidence, right? And this idea of like imposter syndrome. So I'm curious, like, um, how are you feeling, kind of like confidence wise in comparison to the beginning?
Mhm.
And what kind of growth have you seen within yourself? Do you feel like it's it's on an upwards trend? Are you like, yes, I got this. This is like I've owned it, or like,
Mhm.
yeah, just what's that process been like for you?
Yeah, there's definitely ups and downs, I think still. So, but I think overall I have gotten more used to the idea that this is something I can do and that
Yeah.
yeah, and that yeah, provide like value doing it. Um, let's see. Yeah, I think yeah, um I've gotten more comfortable with understanding that being stuck is perfectly okay and it's nothing to yeah, freak out about as much as I used to in the past. Still do a little bit, but
Sure.
if
Yeah.
you get stuck sometimes you just need to take a break and having fresh eyes can help you get see that thing that you were missing and it might be something silly like still even for me yeah sometimes uh, there might be some syntax issues that's creating an issue um,
Hmm.
so yeah looking out for little things like that when you're tired and stressed it's much more manageable when you know take a break or just having
Yeah.
someone else to speak to about it as well yeah finding guidance is I think always helpful luckily um, the yeah, there's enough resources for me to be able to ask when I do run into something that I'm unfamiliar with and get answers on that so I can continue working. Um,
Yeah.
sorry, I kind of went in a funny loop, but yeah, the confidence
That's
piece.
okay.
Um, hmm, yeah, I think it's like easy to like compare myself to, especially since a lot of the friends I have who are in software have been doing it for 3, 4, 5, 6 plus years, maybe longer.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy to
Yeah.
compare and be like, I should know this by now. Or even in class, like some people might have come from a comp sci background and decided that they wanted something more robust in like um, the hands-on aspect before they go into a full-time job. There are people like that, and just people have different skills too. Is something to recognize as well. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think like yeah, feeling comfortable with like leaning into that and having people um yeah, help you find your own way too has been
Yeah.
helpful. Mm.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, that's awesome. I think it's yeah, it's really challenging, and it really, I feel like to your point, it can kind of depend on the day,
Mm.
uh, like how you're feeling on things, right? Like if you're having wins and you're getting the things figured out, it's like, hell yeah, I got this, I
Mhm.
nailed this. And then there's gonna be the days where you spend an entire day trying to figure out a bug and you've made no progress, and that, you know, it happens, right? Like
Mhm.
you move forward with it. But
Yeah.
yeah, connecting with people, I think is so helpful with that, right? Rubber ducking, as you were mentioning earlier,
Mhm.
right? So I feel that. I feel that, like, I've been doing this, was it 4 years now?
Mm.
Something like that. And I feel like I've gone through like a couple different versions of imposter syndrome. Like one was like just being a software developer, and then when I got into education, that brought up a whole different layer of like,
Mhm.
should I actually be teaching right now? Like maybe someone better could be doing this, right? But I learned, I got better at it. I still ask questions all the time, and um, I haven't been fired yet, so I guess I'm still doing the thing. So, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what I'm trying to keep in mind too, like, yeah, even if the first version of something you do just sucks, like, yeah, you have to
Yep.
have that, bad version in order to, like, incrementally work up to the better version of either your code or yourself, whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, I got two last
Mhm.
quick little questions. Um, the first one is, just curious to hear, like, what you've worked here for 6 months or so, and I'm curious, like, for the next 6 months, like, what's kind of your goal? What's kind of like your focus, either technically, professionally, personally? Where do you kind of want to see yourself being at in another 6 months from now?
Yeah. So one of the things that grabbed my attention with working for ShipShape was that they I guess they want to schedule in about 8 hours of volunteer or self learning time each week. So now that I'm feeling at least somewhat comfortable with with the framework, like I think I can
Yeah.
yeah uh, build something and view if I really needed to. Yeah, I would like to spend more of my time using that volunteer time finding open source tickets that I can work on myself or help out with projects that are in line with like my personal interests, like especially I guess just like different nonprofit causes I think I would be interested in working in. So I've been starting to poke into that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that and
Is
yeah.
there any specific ones that like you're like looking at directly right now, or?
Um, I don't. Yeah, it's not. I guess like set in stone yet, but yeah,
Sure,
I
sure.
do want to work on some like political campaigns for just issues that are really important right
Cool.
now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. That's
that
awesome.
sounds
Yeah,
really
I was
big
just
and
curious.
weird,
That's
but
all.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Awesome. Well, very cool. So yeah, that's awesome. Like open source work is so cool uh to find like different projects that line up with kind of like values and um things that you want to be working on as well as like technical growth wise too, right? So, well, awesome. Last question. Just curious, like, if our listeners do have any like further questions or want to follow up with the work that you're doing, whether it's blog posts or working on open source projects, is there a way that they can reach out to you or follow along with the work that you're doing?
Sure. Yeah, like LinkedIn might be good. My username is Kim Hanna, so KIMHANNA. I was somehow able to find my name on LinkedIn, not yet taken. So that was a nice win for me.
Nice.
And then
Yes.
it's just at Hannah on Slack if you're in the Turing network.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, definitely make sure to reach out to Hannah then. Take her feedback and send a message when you reach out to
Mm.
her. Um, and yeah, sounds great. I really, again, appreciate your time, Hannah, and coming on the show and sharing with all of us, the
Sure.
knowledge and things that you've done. And so yeah, just grateful to have you here.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you, Travis. And yeah, I'm really happy to talk with any like current students or recent grads with anything that they might want to talk about with the job hunt process or just about school. It was really helpful for me to just have a lot of alumni to talk to while I was in school. And yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we'll talk about this afterwards at a later point, but maybe we can get you in for to come in and kind of talk with some Mod 4 students for this next inning or something, if you'd
Cool.
be interested. But
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I'll try not to be as
yeah,
fumbly and all over the place.
nah, you've been terrific. That's yeah, no, you've been absolutely great. So thanks so much, Hannah. And thanks to all of our listeners as well. Again, whether you're listening in live on YouTube or tuning into us on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcast, which is always hosted shortly after the stream. So if you happen to like the show, give us a thumbs up. Follow us on our channel to find out when our next videos go live. And stay tuned for next week's show as well. I've got a few people that are interested in coming on the show, just figuring out some of the logistics for what time works best for everyone. But yeah, that's going to be at the same time as always, Monday at 4 p.m. Mountain Time. That's either 3 p.m. Pacific Standard or 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And as always, thanks y'all for listening in. Hope y'all stay safe. And until next time, we will catch y'all later. Thanks.